Marc Leishman has been a mainstay in golfing majors for over a decade now, but after competing in 30 of them in a row, he's about to miss out on one due to LIV Golf's dispute with the official World Golf Rankings Authority. He's not bothered by it though. Why? Well, in today's video, we're going to discuss Leishman's admission and a big month for Australian golf, so keep watching. First off, Leishman doesn't care about losing major qualification. Despite LIV Golf's strong inaugural season and popularity, it's still sorely lacking a lot of departments. The official world rankings, for instance, is just one of those things that Greg Norman just can't seem to figure out. And while that didn't really bother anyone initially, it's actually started to hurt some of the league's members now. Marc Leishman, for one, is an LIV member who's been at the top of his game for over a decade now. The man is basically always in the top 50 or is just really good during big events, so he gets automatic invitations to golfing majors. Now that he's joined the Saudi League, though, the six-time PGA Tour winner has been slowly drifting down the order, so much so that he's actually out of the top 50. And that's where things get tricky, because that also means no automatic invitation to next year's Masters at Augusta National. Here's the interesting bit. Most golfers would be distraught at losing the opportunity to compete in one of the biggest tournaments of the year. After all, this is the holy grail of golf. Well, apparently Leishman isn't one of them. According to him, it doesn't matter if he isn't able to compete at the event in 2023. In fact, the 39-year-old went as far to say that he's played in enough majors at this point in his career to not care about losing his qualification. And honestly, it kind of makes sense since he has had plenty of chances to win over the past few years. Up next, the Aussie opens up about his LIV golf move. Now, while Leishman's reasoning for not caring much about his major qualification makes sense, it's also a bit weird because as an elite athlete, you'd want to take part in every big competition. Plus, even his compatriot Cam Smith has been very vocal about the issue with OWGR not accepting LIV's request to grant ranking points. That said, it looks like he's always had the possibility in the back of his mind, even when he was signing the contract to join the upstart circuit. Speaking to the Sydney Morning Herald, the Australian star went into detail about his LIV golf move, and according to him, losing access to major events was one of the things that he had to weigh up while contemplating his career choice. He then went on to explain that he's played at pretty much all the major events over the last 12 or 13 years, so obviously had his chances. Of course, he clarified that he doesn't have anything against the majors. In fact, he actually does want to compete in them. It's just that missing out isn't as big of a big deal as it would be to some other golfers. Guess playing golf for over a decade makes you a bit jaded, huh? Still, the 39-year-old hasn't fully lost hope yet, as he's still got some chance of getting into the Masters by winning other tournaments. So he's gonna try to qualify for the British Open and the US Open regardless of his Augusta status. If he can't get in though, he's gonna be more than happy supporting LIV teammate Cam Smith. What's more, Leishman's excited about building his LIV franchise. Staying at home and watching your compatriot take part in the Masters doesn't sound too bad, but the Aussie star is actually way more excited for something else entirely: his LIV golf franchise. If you didn't already know, Leishman is a part of the Cam Smith-led contingent in the Saudi League, and they've had some pretty decent success during the first season too. That said, the six-time PGA Tour winner who's arrived in Australia for his first tournament on home soil in 3 years can't wait to get going for the 2023 season. According to him, it wasn't even the playing side of things that lured him over to Greg Norman's league. Instead, it was the business opportunity that came when running your own NFL-styled franchise, which was an instant draw for him. After all, it's not like he's getting any younger. As a matter of fact, the 39-year-old even mentioned that he wants to stay within the game after retiring to manage his franchise in the circuit. What's more, he also confirmed that he doesn't really have any intentions to keep playing for too long. Besides, it can be hard for anyone over 40 to maintain the level of sharpness that's required to stay on top. So he's not going to overstay his welcome on the golf course and would rather spend his time making the big bucks instead. And to be fair, we don't blame him. Like, the guy clearly came to the breakaway league with a plan and he's fully committed to executing it. Not to mention, Leishman won some major tournament in Australia. Despite the PGA Tour's latest expansion, it hasn't been able to bring any big events down under, which honestly is a bummer since the country produces so much top golfing talent. So LIV Golf has stepped up to fill that void by announcing an event in Australia at the start of the next campaign. Still, while that's great and everything, it's not quite the same as having a major, is it? Yeah, and that's what Leishman thinks as well, cause according to him, not having a major in his home country is a missed opportunity. Sadly though, the time for him to have any influence over that decision may have passed cause, well, he can't even qualify for the Masters anymore. Don't get us wrong, we're not saying he's lost his mojo or anything. In fact, he's not the one at fault at all. Seriously, the dude has finished outside the top 50 just once since 2014 and has been lingering in the 20s for the past few years. So it's a bummer to see him drift out of the rankings like this. Not to mention, he's had 3 top 10 finishes at Augusta, making him a serious contender for the title. Then again, he's already made peace with the fact that he may never play in a major again unless the OWGR finds some way to award ranking points to LIV athletes. We just want to see the best golfers enter the best tournaments, so we've got our fingers crossed. Now for Sutherland discusses a big month for Australian golf. Speaking of best players, Australian golf is gearing up for its biggest month in quite some time. No, seriously, the country is hosting a couple of tournaments like the Australian PGA Championship and the Australian Open with fields that are the strongest we've ever seen in years. You've got fan favorites like the reigning British Open champion Cameron Smith with his homecoming, and of course the former world #1 Adam Scott, and of course Leishman's there to compete as well. What's more, women will also compete at the Australian Open alongside the men for the first time at a national open, making it a pretty big deal. That said, while the country is finally getting its flowers for producing some of the best golfing talents in the world, Golf Australia's chief executive, James Sutherland, isn't ready to dish out any compliments just yet. Now, many would say we can attribute the Open's field strength to LIV Golf. After all, Greg Norman has been the biggest proponent of significant events in the country over the past year or so. Sutherland, however, seems to disagree, as according to him, the Saudi League doesn't have any relevance here, and instead it's more of just a timing thing. Finally, Sutherland wants majors to stand above the politics. Alright, you can lower your pitchforks cause the Golf Australia chief didn't actually mean it as an insult to the Saudi League. We're sure that he has his fair share of issues with them, but this isn't one of them. In fact, he just thinks that the pandemic and the scheduling issues have prevented events from happening in the country over the past couple of years, so it's nice to see some big golf stars return once again. Oh, and he's also against banning players just because they're a part of another league like LIV Golf, as according to him, the majors have to stand above all the politics and put the interests of the game first. He went on to explain that if you really want to have the best product and the best players going against each other, then you've got to let them compete without any restrictions. After all, if that weren't the case, then you'd lose access to some really important golfers like Cameron Smith and Dustin Johnson. What's more, Sutherland also mentioned that he hopes to see a resurgence in the country after these events, as over the past few years, the President's Cup has been the most significant event in the country. But of course, that's not really ideal since the tournament is on an 8 to 12 year rotation cycle. So a yearly thing is definitely needed. Well, that's a wrap for this video. Do you think that Australia needs a major tournament? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one.